do a quick mic check. There we go. Check, 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 check. There we go. Check, 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 check. Cool. All right, so we will have access to the chat. Let's try not to injure ourselves. Oh, we already got some chatters. Jackson 2013 said, "Sup? What's up, Jackson? Welcome to the stream. Just gonna be hitting some golf shots, answering some questions, helping people with their game. For me, I'm using this time to decompress a little bit. Wow, fascinating. Oof. Really working on stability with these wedges. Ugh. You know, some days are going to be better than others, and today was just a tough day. You know, it's hard to see people you care about be in pain and not have really any way to fix it. But that is part of life, right? Just gotta try to make the best out of every day, right? It doesn't matter what happened on the shot before. Doesn't matter how you'll play the next shot. You just gotta play this one. Gotta do today the best you can. You know, because nothing says there's gonna be tomorrow. So, I'll be grateful to have this time to come out here and hit balls and hang out with you guys. Whoa, that was a little thin. Skinny one. It is such a blessing to have this net here. Now, this indoor setup. Really be able to, you know, have access to hitting balls close to 24/7. Right? You know, my wife might think it's strange, but nobody's really going to stop me if I come out here at, you know, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Really working on contact with these here. Positive Person said, "Hi, bro." Hey, Positive Person. I like that username. I try to be a positive person. Try to spread a little bit of good vibes and, you know, motivation here and there. You know, someone recently asked me, like, what's the point of your channel? And I think, you know, beyond, you know, documenting what I'm doing with my golf game, right, which is, you know, moderately interesting, you know, the point is to try to make somebody's day a little better, right? There's enough negativity out there. You turn on the news, you turn on the TV, right? You can find something pretty negative really quickly, right? A lot of crazy stuff going on. But I want to put something out there, create something that is, you know, just a break from all that, right? Somewhere you can just, you know, find a positive environment, catch a good vibe, right? And share some of the, you know, hard learned lessons that I have from my life, right? Talking about, you know, going to therapy and sobriety, you know, dealing with anxiety and mental health stuff, and you know, because I think it's important, right? If we want to destigmatize these things, and I believe that talking about them openly is one of the best ways to do that, right? Just ask your friends, hey, how's your mental health been, right? Like if your buddy had a bad knee, you wouldn't think twice about being like, hey, bud, how's your knee feeling, right? But if you notice he's a little down, you might think twice before being like, hey, man, are you doing okay? Like, are you, you know, everything good? And we shouldn't think twice about that, right? It should be just as normal, just as cool to be like, hey, man, like, you feeling okay? Like, how's your mental health been? So that's the point, right? You know, I can't both believe that that is how you destigmatize these issues, and that talking about them will accomplish that, and then not talk about them, right? And, you know, it may or may not be surprising to hear that that type of content, like, by far does the worst, right? Views, you know, engagement, you know, but I still think it's important to talk about, right? Like, we're not solving for an algorithm. You know, we're trying to, you know, make something that could potentially have a positive impact. Jackson, it's for the practice, you know. Sean said hi. Jackson said hi. Carson Medlin, how do I stop a fade? Great question, Carson. So the first thing I'm going to want you to understand, right, is why are we overfading it? Why are we slicing it a bit, right? That means your face is open at impact, and your path is some amount this way, right, to the left, across the ball if you're a right-handed player. Imagine you were trying to hit a drop shot in ping pong, right? You kind of hit down and across the ball, right? Try and add a bunch of spin, take all the speed off. That's what's happening when you're hitting a big slice, right? So we want to try to create the opposite effect, right? Neutralize the path and the club face so we can get the ball, you know, flying straighter or even drawing right to left a little bit, right? How do we do that? I like to use your brain. It's the best tool in your tool belt that any of us have, right, is our brain. And use your brain to teach your body what it needs to do, right? So aim, you know, like you're going to hit a nice straight ball down the fairway, or, you know, to use a baseball analogy, like aim down to center field, right? And then you're going to force yourself to say, hey, I'm going to hit this ball down the left field line, right? Or I'm going to turn it and draw it into the left rough, right? The left trees almost, right? Teach yourself how to hit a big draw, because we want to learn these skills, right? These skills about, you know, manipulating the club face, right, to produce a draw or a fade on command, right? That's what shot shaping and ball striking is. So aim to center field, right? And then you're going to force yourself to hit it down that left field line, right? And just pay attention to, you know, what happens in your body and your hands, what you're doing with the club, right? Once you start to feel that club face shutting more, seeing that ball turn right to left, right? Now, you don't want to get up on the first tee and try to hit big hooks, right? But once you start to develop the ability to turn it, right, hit a big draw, from there, you can try to, you know, hit a fade, hit a draw, a straighter shot. Ahmed said, what's your opinion on the forward-leaning shaft approach? If I'm not sure I understand the question, only because at least if you're talking about an iron, like, I think that's just how you have to hit the ball, right? So, I mean, because we have an angled, lofted club here, right, the face, and the ball sits on a somewhat flat piece of ground, right, you have to lean the shaft forward some amount just to get the club, you know, the face onto the ball, right? I think it works just fine in, obviously, you know, in moderate amounts, right? You can't be trying to hit wedges like, you know, like this. Just like I don't think, you know, a perfectly neutral shaft and impact is going to perform the best. All the way up to like 3 wood. right? You know, and then you get to driver, and I think there's two, you know, you want it to be pretty neutral at impact because we're trying to hit up on it. We're trying to take spin off. But yeah, I think it's very important to teach impact in a way that has the shaft leaning forward. Obi-Wan said hi. Hey, Obi-Wan. Double K Fishing. How do I hit a draw? We just chatted about that, so hopefully you caught that. Nip Sauce. Welcome back, Nip Sauce, in the chat. It's a field game. Michael says, I'm having a terrible time getting elevation on drive, sometimes putting the ball into the ground, leaving a nice dent and dirt streak in the grass with the ball instead of a good drive. Okay, so, Michael, what we were just chatting about, right? This forward shaft lean idea, right? And de-lofting the club. You're doing that to an extreme degree, right, with your driver. And let me grab my driver and we can do a quick demo, right? And maybe this will, you know, we'll chat about some feels, too, that I want you to work on. Right, but with the driver, the club sits up on the tee, right? It's off the ground. And our objective with the driver is to launch it, you know, up into the air with little spin, right? Not a lot of spin. So to do that, we need to hit up on the ball, right? We need to have a positive angle of attack, ideally, in order to maximize our launch conditions, right? So if you're telling me that, hey, I'm hitting drivers and they're literally like going into the ground in front of me, right? That means your angle of attack is way too steep, right? There's not enough loft. You know, the idea about dynamic loft is static loft plus or minus angle of attack, right? Whether it's positive or negative. So if your dynamic loft is so negative that you are hitting into the ground, right? Then, you know, we got to try to launch the ball, take some of that descending angle out of the driver, right? And a good way we can practice that, number one, when you are on the practice tee, right? You're at the driving range and you have your driver out. I want you to give yourself a task, right? Pick a spot. Could be, you know, the top of the fence. Could be a tree in the distance. And you're going to say, hey, I want to launch my ball over that spot, right? You know, and give your brain a task. Give yourself a task orientation to say, I need to launch this ball up over that, you know, imaginary barrier, right? And what you'll notice is your body will react, I imagine, right, by, you know, some amount of less, you know, over tilting towards the target, right? And a great feel for that, right, if you're still struggling, is to feel like when you're hitting the driver on the downswing, like you're hitting it from low to high, right? Whereas with an iron, you kind of want to feel more like you're on top of it, right? From high to low is the strike, right? You know, down into it. With the driver, feel like you're, you know, from low to high, launching it, right? So give that a try, Michael. Hopefully that helps. Logan says, on my drive, what's the best way to stop from swinging in, causing it to slice 2 fairways over? Good question, Logan. So if you've already identified, right, that the path is the cause of your slice, right, and that, you know, distinctly also with the face open, right, and you're still struggling to adjust the path, right, like I mentioned a second ago, try giving yourself a task orientation. You know, aim like you're going to hit a ball right down the center of the fairway, and then teach yourself, like, how would I make a swing that would hit it into the left trees, right, and give yourself a task and try to hit big draws and learn what your body and the club will adjust, right, to produce that ball flight. But on top of that, a good drill you can do, put a head cover down just to the outside of where you would hit the ball, right, outside and behind it slightly, because you're describing a path that is steep and over the top, right, and approaching the ball from the outside. So if you do that with the head cover in that position, like I just demonstrated, you would hit the head cover, right? So giving yourself a physical barrier, this will force you to shallow out the club some, right, and send it from the inside, right? Otherwise, you're going to hit that head cover. So giving yourself a physical barrier can be an excellent way to adjust your technique. And like I always say, guys, don't do these drills at full speed. Try it at like half speed first. You'll make a lot more progress. Anthony, what's the handicap? Usually around 0. How do you practice your short game? The answer is not enough. How do I practice short game? Usually a lot of reps, right? I just have a big shag bucket of balls with probably 50 balls in it, and I'll find a practice green that's pretty empty, a chipping green somewhere, and dump it out, and I'll pick different targets, right, every 3, 4, 5 balls, and just practice chipping, hitting a bunch of different shots, right? I hit all my shots around the green with one club. That's my 60 degree. Actually, you can see we were doing some chipping practice recently, and I'm like the horrible person that's a good player but doesn't ever clean their clubs. So there's a lot of chipping practice remnants on there. So yeah, I love injecting some creativity into your short game practice, right? Being like, even if I have a nice fairway lie, a fringe lie that I'm chipping off of, right? Like, what's the highest flop shot I could hit with my 60 degree to a pin? And then try to hit the same pin with the same club and be like, how could I hit the lowest possible shot, right? And adjust, so I'm trying to build my skill set, to hit those different shots around the green. But if you're a beginner, like you guys have heard me say before, if you're a beginner in the short game, learn one shot that you can hit consistently, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times, that you can hit that shot and land the ball and keep it on the green, right? If you're chipping around the green, objective number 1, the fastest way to lower your score is avoid double bogeys, no double chips, no 3 putts, right? That's the recipe. So develop a shot, right? It could be a very square face, putting style chip, right? But pick a shot that you can develop until you can confidently say, it might be 25 feet away, right? I'm not going to be getting it close all the time, but I can at least hit this shot and get it on the green. That's always our goal. Glum Lettuce said hi. Glum Lettuce has a question. Angel Goodridge said hi. Hey, Angel. Oleg asks, how important is fitting for fitting? I don't know what grinds to get, etc. I do think fitting is important, probably once you're like a single-digit handicap, if you really are interested in just taking the doubt out, right? Like, I got fit for my driver and woods, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I have the same shaft still. I just don't have to wonder, right? Like, I can put any, head on that shaft, and it's going to feel pretty good to me. Same with the irons, right? I pulled the iron shafts from my last set, put them in the new set. So I just don't have to worry again. So if you're a tinkerer with equipment, like I used to be a little bit, I do think getting fit is a good way to like put that behind you. I have trouble getting shaft lean and de-lofting without closing the face. Good question, Fluzzy, right? Fluzzy? Because this is something that, can take a little bit of time to understand, right? Is this a relationship between what the angle of the shaft and the face, right? So if you were to just hold a club, right, and make it square with the shaft very neutral, right, and then you push the handle forward, what happens to that face? It opens, points to the right, right? Conversely, if the handle's behind us, that now it's pointing to the left, right? So this is not your question, Floozy, but for everybody else, just some basics to understand, right? Also, what happens if we lower the handle versus raise it, right? Lowering the handle, flattening the angle, opens the face, more upright, more to the left, right? So I would imagine, right, if you're telling me, Floozy, that you're, getting the handle forward and de-lofting it, but also shutting the face, right? So I think you need to try to separate those two things. Yeah, again, not at full speed, at a slow speed, just hitting, some half shots, right? And here's a good example, right? You could say, I'm going to deliver a ton of shaft lean and hit a fade, right? Or hit like a cutty 60-yard shot, right? And then see what you'd have to do to manipulate that. Pay attention, to the feels, right? Clearly, you're already a somewhat advanced player, if this is a question you're asking. So that's where I would start. Just play around with delivering that shaft lean, but also trying to, feel the ball going to the right. Glum Lettuce used to have the classic ex-ball player slice, got down to about 10, didn't play for a few years, looking to pick it back up, suddenly have a draw to snap hook for the miss. Any drills? Well, the good news, Glum Lettuce, if you were a ball player, you can deliver some speed, right? And it sounds like if you were a 10, you can definitely hit the ball a little bit. So you know what the miss is. You're hitting, these balls that overturn, they overdraw. So that means that you are delivering the club into impact with the face shut some amount, right? And the path, too much from the inside, right? If you're producing a big snapper like that, right? So we need to neutralize those conditions. And what I'm going to ask you to do, we use a baseball analogy, right? If you're telling me, hey, I'm trying to hit it to center field, right down the fairway, right? And I'm actually hitting it like into the left trees, I'm hitting it like a foul ball to the left, right? Well, you can imagine what that used to feel like, right? You get in front of it, but the hands are turning over, right? And it's going that way to the left. Well, try to feel like you take that same setup, like you're going to hit it to center field, and then hit a few. Try to hit like a home run to the right field line, right down the right field pole, and just feel what you're going to have to do when your brain's going to take over and say, no, we can't hit it there. We have to hit it down the right field line. We have to feel the face more open with a more neutral path, right? And just see what will happen, right? When you start to teach yourself again, relearning this control, of the club face and the club path, and that relationship, right, is what produces flight, right? The path and the face at impact. So building those skills, will be very beneficial as you, continue getting back into golf. Jim and Dana, how did the 9 holes go? Well, how did the 9 holes go? I was nearly murdered in the first fairway by somebody who not only hit a ball basically directly at me, but then didn't yell for, which I thought was insane. And I let them know that was very not cool, right? This ball legitimately, I was just walking with the push cart, right, down the fairway, and it was literally right there. Boom. Just thud. And I didn't hear anything. I mean, it was just missile from the sky, right? So that was a little rattling. But it was fine. We made a couple birdies, a couple silly bogeys. I putted the ball off of a green. That was pretty fun. Michael, affirm, we'll try. Sudden issue like I'm newbie again. Maybe leaning forward and wrists are causing club face to be facing down. Thanks. You're welcome. James, when I leak my drive off target and find myself under the canopy of trees, no obstruction in the line of sight to the green, but I need to keep the ball low. The correct iron for the distance is too lofted and would end up clipping the trees, but the lower loft is too long. I struggle with the distance control on long irons that require a lesser swing. Any suggestions? This is a good question, James, right? This is a more advanced technique, right? You're saying, hey, I'm in a recovery situation, but I do have a clear line of sight to the green. I don't need to just chip it back to the fairway, right? If you had an obstructed view, if you had trees in your way, if you didn't have a clear shot that you felt like 100 out of 100 times you could hit it out of, I'm saying, hey, pitch it back to the fairway, right? But that's not what you're saying. Hey, I have a decent lie. I'm going to give you an example of what comes to mind for me, right? Say I'm 145 yards from the green, which normally would be like a pitching wedge, or a 9 iron, depending on the wind or the pin location, right? But we have this tree issue, right? So I'm going to grab a 7 iron, maybe a 6 iron, depending on how much height we have, but I have a 7 iron in my hand, right? And this is where, James, I think having some of these feels to go back to about, for partial swings, and this is something you should definitely practice. Like, I know I have checkpoints in my swing where I can say, this is a comfortable half swing, a 3/4 one, and then the full swing, right? And I could comfortably make one of those, at least close, swing with pretty much every club in my bag, right? And so let's go back to our example where, call it 145 out. I have a 7 iron. And how do I keep this low and flighted, but also take some speed off of it, right? Because I don't need it to go 175 or 180 yards, right? I need it to probably land like 120 and bounce up a bit, right? So some things that I think will help, James, choke down a little bit on the club, right? This will also help you, make nice contact. There's nothing worse than being like, well, just make a nice easy swing, and then you like kind of chunk it or hit it off the toe and you don't get the shot you want, right? So choke down a little. I would stand a bit closer to it, right? Feel like you're really on top of it, right? And you don't want to feel like the swing is really slow, right? Keep your normal tempo, right? But from here, and with the ball a little bit back in my stance open slightly, right? That's the last part. So some setup adjustments could really help here. Just make that abbreviated. You know, I'm going to go like a half swing here, right? And it's my normal tempo. I'm controlling the speed with the length of the swing, right? It's still smooth, but it's a similar tempo. And that's how I would think about producing, you know, again, that lower flighted shot, right? Standing a bit closer to it, opening the stance, ball back some, you know, a little bit of choke down on the club. And it takes practice, right? You know, you can be at the range. Next time you're grabbing your 7-iron, say, well, I'm going to practice, you know, 5 shots with my normal full swing. I'm going to pick a target and, you know, swing my 7-iron. And then the last couple, I'm going to say, well, what kind of swing would I have to make to land it like 100 yards out with the same club, right? And, you know, hit some practice shots and just see like, oh, it's going to come out lower anyway. But, you know, try to pay attention to the adjustments you'll make as you try to dial in that shot with those last few balls on the range. You know, try to practice some 8-irons, some 7-irons that only fly like 100 yards, right? So that's a great question. I appreciate it, James. Let me catch up on the chat here quickly, guys. Mika Dow says, when you chip, do you bow or cup your wrist during the backswing? No, I definitely don't. We'll toss this back. I'll grab my 60, right? So for pretty much, with the exception of like a FOF shot, right, where you might have some, you know, like a little bit of hinge in it. I don't chip with a whole bunch of wrist hinge, right? I like to feel more of a, like kind of a rotational shoulder-driven chipping motion, right? More like an expanded putting stroke, right? Where I'm pretty stable and I'm just kind of turning, right? But I don't feel any like bowing or cupping in my wrist when I chip really at all. Like I said, maybe the exception is if I was really needed to hit like a high one out of a bunker or something. But no, I think trying to keep it simple when you're chipping is the way to go. Jordan says, what's the best driver for beginner? I think something forgiving. Right, I have a max forgiveness driver right now, right? It's because they managed to take enough spin off, and it's very forgiving on the toe strikes that I struggle with. This is the QI10 Max head. And Jordan, I would also, or Jorlin, don't feel like you have to get brand new equipment, right? You can do really well, you know, getting clubs on eBay or, you know, Second Swing, Club Bidder, right? There's all these resources where you can, you know, get really good quality clubs and do quite well without paying, you know, brand new retail price. Can you explain the driver swing using other sports terms, if possible? Baseball, I cannot get the swing down. I can try, Will. It's been a long time since I was a good baseball player, but so let's grab our driver, right? And Will, tell me a little more. Are you struggling with a slice, or you want to just kind of go slow and you know, I'll try to break it down as best I can. Willow said, okay, I'll come back to your question, Willow. Craig said hi. Hey, Craig. All right, so let's answer Will's question first. So driver, right, we want to hit up on the ball, right? The ball's sitting on the tee, up off the ground, right? We want to hit it up into the sky, right? We want to launch it, right? So for a baseball analogy, right, what I want you to start to try to feel, especially with the driver, right? Imagine you were, you know, you're in your stance, right? You're sitting on a curveball, right? So you're going to kind of lean, you know, stack into this right side, right? And then, you know, say you're a pull hitter, you know, power guy, you're going to hit a high bomb, a tank, if you will, right? You know, into left field, right? So you would wait on that curveball, you'd kind of get back here, right? And then boom. Right? Sending that ball up into the sky, into left field, over the fence, right? With the driver, we want to feel something somewhat similar. You know, this low to high feeling, right? To really, hitting up on the ball at impact, sending it up into the air. That takes spin off, adds launch. These are good things for distance. And especially, a lot of beginner players struggle with the slice. A lot of baseball players, right? Because they're so used to, you just are on the ball already, but then you add the tilt, the ball's on the ground, right? The club's a lot longer, gets inside and steep, so that's pretty normal. So if you, again, try to exaggerate that feeling of like, we're going to try to hit up on it, hit it to left field, that can be a good place to start with driver. Okay. Willow says, let's say you're at the fringe and you can make the easy shot 8 or 9 to just bounce it, a bump and run. If I go for the 56 or the club that I'm comfortable with, should the left arm be straight? I think the arm will end up being straight regardless, right? Because that is sort of what the golf swing is, right? It's this triangle between our arms and the club, right? And we swing that around our body. So at least in the backswing, right, that arm will be pretty bent just as a result of how we want to, most efficiently swing the club around our body, right? So even if you're hitting a little chip shot, right, with a sand wedge, right? Well, in order to do that, there's really no scenario where the arm wouldn't be straight, right? Like you don't need to, I'm not really sure how you even would bend it, right? So I think feeling like you're maintaining this triangle, keeping that connection. You guys have seen me demonstrate this towel drill. This can work even with chipping, right? So you grab a towel, put it under the arms like this, right? Don't let the towel fall. And this will help you keep that triangle all connected and teach your body how to move, right? To keep the arms and the club more in front of your chest, right? So even if you were hitting a little pitch shot from the fringe, right? You would do this to maintain that connection. And yes, the left arm would still be straight. So hopefully that helps, Willow. Isn't golf really hard and really fun, though? Yeah, it is, Jackson. I completely agree with you. Con the Goat said hi. Hey, Con the Goat. Back in the chat. Glum Lettuce says, it's like I heard, turn the hands over, now it's all I do. Used to try a real genius style turn with a strong grip and quiet hand. Some of my normal swing is either perf draw or snap. Oh, Gankus. Got it. Yeah, I think, again, that's what's so awesome about golf, right? Is, I'm actively working towards more of that type swing, right? Less, throwing the hands, more body rotation, more Gankus style, right? And you're doing the complete opposite, and we're getting better results. So that's what's awesome about golf is there's no two perfect ways to do it, right? No one perfect way. John Rahm can have an amazing golf career, and so can Jim Furyk, right? And if you put them side by side, number one, John Rahm's swing is over before Jim Furyk even finishes his backswing, right? The moves are completely different, but yet they both, had incredibly successful PGA Tour careers, won a bunch of money. So there's a ton of different ways to get it done. Big Rhythm says, any tips for a guy who does chicken wing thing with his right arm when hitting driver? Well, when you say right arm, Big Rhythm, does that mean you're left-handed? Come back to me, Big Rhythm, on the left-handed question. Keith says, what would be the cause for a snap hook for driver? I don't hook my irons, but hook the driver pretty consistently. Well, if you're hooking it, right, that means it could be in your setup. It could be, in how you're swinging the driver relative to the irons, right, if the irons are going pretty straight. But if you're hooking it consistently, right, that means the face is too close and the path too inside at impact. Too out to the right for a right-handed player. So I would practice hitting some fades, learn how to cut it with your driver. And then once you learn some club face control and some path control, then you try to hit it straight, right? But try to get a sense in your own swing how you can, number one, see the ball going the other way, right? That will definitely help neutralize the one that you're trying to hit straight. Will says, I slice, but recently have been snap hooking, thinning on misses. Yeah, so same thing for you and for Keith. Kraken said hi. Hey, Kraken. Hey, Pedro. Jackson says, what's the best way how to hit a chip onto the green? So if you've got a regular chip, right, let's say you're, 5, 10, 15 yards from the green, right? I'm going to say 10 yards. And so grab a wedge of some kind, right? That can be a pitching wedge, a sand wedge. Mine have numbers on them, right? 60, 56, and 52. So grab one of your wedges, right? One that has a bit of loft on it, maybe a neutral one, a gap wedge, or a sand wedge. And you're going to set up to the ball with your normal, neutral grip. I like narrowing the stance, right? So for a full swing, my feet are more like this. When I chip, my feet come, about half the distance, right? Pretty narrow. That helps me to, stay on top of the ball, right? I'm not trying to have a big weight shift, right? I'm trying to make crisp, clean contact and have very precise, accuracy, right? I want to land the ball close to my spot, right? When I'm hitting driver, I want to hit it down there someplace, right? When I'm hitting a chip, I want to land it, in a very small area. So I get a little closer to it, narrow the stance, choke down on the grip a bit, right? I go about halfway down my lob wedge when I'm chipping. I'm standing closer to it, right? And then from here, you're just going to make a bigger putting stroke, right? Imagine this was your putter, and you're just going to make a bigger putting stroke, right? Brushing the grass under the ball. And the loft on the club, you don't need to lift it up. You don't have to lean back and try to help it up in the air. This club has a ton of loft on it. It has more than enough loft to pop that ball up, get it on the green, get it rolling close to the hole, right? And you're just going to have to practice this a bunch to learn, what feels best for you moving the club through the longer grass, the rough around the green, right? But that's the basic motion. It's just... And that's it. That should help get you on your way, hitting some chips on the green. Kraken says, I played 9 holes yesterday, shot 23 over. It's my second year playing golf. Every tee box, I sliced my driver, which was kind of annoying because I was in a bad shot. So, yeah, driver's definitely going to be a club you'll need to practice, especially as you continue playing more and more golf, right? You'll find the days where you hit the driver well. Golf is much easier, right? You have shorter clubs into the green. You're not worrying about the trees and all the, bunkers and stuff. So driver's a really important club to practice. If you've ever heard the phrase drive for show, putt for dough, it's just not true, right? It's so important to be able to hit driver in play and advance your ball down the fairway. This is true at every handicap level. There's enough data now. We know this to be true. So embrace your driver, Jackson or Kraken. Keep practicing it a bunch, right? You're going to slice, but if you've been in here before, if you're slicing it right, learn how to hit some draws. When you're on the practice range, set up like you're going to hit it, to center field, and then force yourself. Use your brain. Use your brain to take over and say, we're going to hit this ball down the left field line. We just got to hit it over there somewhere. And then pay attention to what your body and the club will do, right? And when you start seeing that ball turning and going right to left, that'll be a big confidence booster, right? To not see that frustrating slice anymore. So give that a try, Kraken. And then once you start to build in, that skill level where you're saying, okay, I can produce this swing that hits the ball right to left, and I can also make a different swing that gets the ball left to right. That's what I would practice when you're on the driving range. Aquatic says, what would you do first as a beginner? Context, played baseball, and I'm having issues slicing the hell out of the ball. Can't seem to hit straight no matter what. Irons, driver, wedges. Okay, great question, Aquatic, because I think we have a lot of pretty newer, beginner players in our stream chat usually. And some of our returning viewers have heard me say this before, so bear with me. But for Aquatic's question, if you're really a beginner, right, you played baseball at some level, so you know how to generate speed, right? You know how to swing, a club or a bat into a ball. So what I need you to learn is impact, right? Impacting a golf ball correctly is very, very different than doing it with a baseball bat, right? So I have an 8-iron here. I want you to grab an 8-iron, a 9-iron, a pitching wedge, right? A pretty short club. And this is next time you're at the driving range. And this is, for aquatics, for any new players out there who are saying, like, I want to get better, I'm not really having a lot of success. What I want you to understand is your golf swing can look all kinds of different ways. You can swing it over the top, you can swing, super shallow, short, long, right? The thing that is consistent among all good players is their position and the club face at impact, right? Their impact position is all pretty consistent, right? And that looks like some amount of the shaft leaning forward towards the target, right? The handle is in front of the ball. The hips are some amount open to the target, right? That's how we generate speed in a rotational sport, right? And, the head is kind of in line or slightly behind the ball, right? So if we understand that universally, there are some key tenets, right? Some important things that we need to accomplish in our impact position. I think we should work backwards from there, right? If I was learning golf from the very beginning all over again, all I would do is grab this 8-iron or 9-iron and what I'm about to show you, right? And just learn impact, right? So grab your 8-iron and you're going to try to hit this ball truly maybe 50 yards in the air, right? So it's going to be a very small, slow swing, right? None of the stuff that happens way up here that you see on TV, right? All the tour pros who have these beautiful, long, flowing swings, right? Don't worry about that for right now. You can add speed. You can make the swing longer down the road, but you'll advance and progress as a player much more quickly if you learn impact and then add speed. So I'll stop talking about it and show you what I mean, right? So normal stance, normal grip, everything. And I'm just going to hit this 8-iron maybe 50 yards. But what I'm going to pay attention to is hitting it straight, at my target. And I want to deliver a clean strike, right? I'm, compressing the ball. And that's all I'm going to worry about. 50 yards. And you just do that over and over again until you really feel like if you hit 10 in a row, like you could hit all 10, pretty straight at your target and hit out of both the center of the face, both, horizontally and vertically, right? And once you can do, 8 or 10 in a row, that will take, several practice sessions, I imagine. Then you start adding some speed. Make the swing a little longer, right? But you'll notice never once have I told you, like, hey, make a full, 100% swing. Try to hit that 8-iron, 160 yards, 150 yards, right? If you're really just getting, beginning, you'll have way more fun learning impact first and then adding speed, right? Like, who cares, if you hit 7 or 8-iron if you're, thin chunking it, somewhere off to the right? It doesn't matter what, how far you hit it. But if you can learn how to hit, at first an 8-iron that goes like 120 yards, right, with just a smooth, kind of shorter swing, that will be way more fun. I promise. So learn impact. That's my best advice. Work backwards from there. How can you minimize spin with a driver? 130 ball speed, but it don't go but 230. Well, 130 ball speed, that kind of sounds right. Do you mean 130 club head speed? V said hi. V says, any tips on maintaining consistency in your contact? So I love the preset impact drill. When my contact gets a little out of whack, right? So I'll go, what I just said to aquatics, right? I'll go back to that drill and just go really slow. And just really, feel the center of the club face a whole bunch in a row. Right? Hitting some little chippy, 8-irons, 9-irons, right? Because your body will self-organize. And if your swing just gets a little off, and you're trying to just maintain consistency, right? Sometimes you really just got to slow it down to notice, oh, wow, I was getting pretty quick in transition, or, the takeaway was getting a little bit inside and I was getting steep on the way down, right? And just slowing it down can be a really good way to work on that consistency. But in addition to that, right, I mentioned this preset impact drill. So I love, getting in here, right, like I just demonstrated, feeling this impact position, right? And then making some small, you know, slower speed swings, having done that. And that can be a great way to feel, you know, some consistency in your strike. Okay, catching up here. Jackson says, okay. Hey, Maxon Hubbard's back in the chat. How do I hit a draw? So, Maxon, I think to hit a draw, you got to learn how to hit a hook first. So that's going to be my prescription for you, Maxon, is tee up some drivers, you know, whatever club you're struggling with most. Set up like you're going to hit it to center field, right, or right down the middle of the fairway. And then what I want you to do is actually hit it into the left rough or down the left field line, to use our baseball analogy, right? So from here, to do that, what I'm going to have to do is get that club face closing sooner, right, in order to get that ball to turn right to left, right? And you might hit some big draws, some, you know, really screaming hooks. But that's okay. You're trying to develop this skill so that when you do get up there and say, hey, okay, you know, I want to hit a little bit of a draw, you would create that same feel, but just a bit less, right? And if it's feeling like, if the hook is the left field line swing, well, maybe you make a, you know, left center swing, right? And that turns into just a draw. But you got to teach yourself how to see that ball going the other way. Thanks for all your support, Maxon. Maxon's been a long time supporter of the channel. Teddy says, what do you do to practice your low point? Great question, Teddy. So like I was just mentioning, I do a bunch of that slow speed work, right? And, you know, I'm at the point where I can pretty much tell the quality of the strike just based on the feel, right? But a great way you can practice your low point, you know, grab a towel or a piece of tape, right? Set this, I have this blue painter's tape. Set this down right behind your golf ball, right? So you have just a little bit of green grass here. And this is a great way to train low point, right? Because if you hit behind the ball, you know, you lean back and you were going to fat it, right? You'll hit that tape. So the goal here is to just deliver a nice clean strike on the ball. I even thinned that one a little. You might have been able to hear. But the thin one, you'll be able to tell, it'll just feel terrible, kind of clangy, right? But I didn't hit that tape. So that's objective number one, right? And this is a great way to practice. That was nice and flush, right? Keeping that low point in front of the ball such that we're impacting ball first and then turf. Zachary says, nice setup. Thanks, Zachary. I appreciate that. Big Rhythm, I am right-handed. My back elbow wings out sort of baseball-esque with a swing on driver. On smaller clubs, I have better control of my elbows. I frankly wouldn't worry about it so much, Big Rhythm, right? If you're talking about this, you know, a right with the driver, right, that gets kind of like flying back this way, right, not super tucked, but, you know, a little bit more out this way, I think that's kind of fine. Like, you can hit a lot of good tee shots. A lot of good players have had that kind of flying right elbow with the driver. Again, you know, unless you think it is dramatically impacting your ability to hit the shots on the golf course that you want to, I wouldn't worry about the position quite as much as, like, am I hitting the center of the face? Am I controlling the club face in order to, you know, hit the ball where I want to? Dirty Dan says, I'm a lefty. Every time I use driver, it goes straight right. So that means you, I assume, is it pulling to the right and flying straight, or is it starting right and also turning right? Is a follow-up question for Dirty Dan. Aquatic says, thank you. You're welcome. Lynn says, hi. Hey, Lynn. V says, thanks. You're welcome. You're welcome to Teddy. You're welcome to Maxon. Yeah, I love these questions, guys. This is awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry. It doesn't tell me your name, just the symbols. Somebody else said hi. Hi, welcome to the stream. Up north, what's your handicap? Right now, it's about 1. Usually between 1 and +1. Turns right. Okay, so Dirty Dan, I'm going to demonstrate, you know, on this side of the ball because it is the right way to set up to the ball. Just kidding, all my lefty friends out there. So for you, right, your club face is closed, and the path is also to the right. So if you're hitting a pull draw, right, the ball is starting right of target and turning right of target. That means our face is closed and our path is across it, right? So you need to neutralize the face, right? Have the face more square to the target, not as shut, pointed this way, right? I guess I am actually demonstrating this left-handed now for you as best I can, right? So we need to neutralize the path, right? Some amount, more down our target line, not across it. And the face needs to be more open. So what I want you to do is grab a head cover, right? Or, an old box of golf balls, something that you can, hit a club into if you do by accident, right? And you're left-handed, so you're going to stand over here. And I want you to set this up behind and slightly outside of your golf ball, right? Such that if you did make that swing where you get a little bit steep and the path shifts out and across it, right, you're going to hit that head cover, that barrier. So that's a great way to train the path, right, to try to neutralize that to be more neutral. A little redundant there, but you get what I'm saying, right? And I think that will also help with your face problem. But if it doesn't, then you got to just practice hitting some big fades, right? Learn how to see that ball for you travel right to left, right? Not left to right, turning. And that will develop, again, these skills that we're working on, club face control, path control. So try the drill, try the feels. Teddy says, I'm normally fat hitter as my miss and working on moving my low point forward. How would you recommend doing that? Weight shift or swing shift? Definitely weight shift, Teddy, right? So we don't need to be shifting the swing in order to accomplish this. But this is something that I've had to practice a bunch. And I think what's helped me most, honestly, is not even having a club, right? But just practicing this move, this weight shift move, right? Of making a backswing and then feeling this left heel land slightly closer to the target when we start the downswing, right? And just practice getting our body to shift our weight like that, right? From the big toe of the left foot to the outside of the heel, right? That's our weight shift. That's how we move the low point forward. So again, it's backswing, weight shift, and then this is all the room. This is everything we're looking for, right? The time and space we need to make the hit on the ball, right? So backswing, weight shift, weight shift, weight shift, downswing, right? And you can just practice just that move. Devin says, I struggle with coming over the top. Any tips? Yeah, so same one that we just did with our friend Big Rhythm, right? And Dirty Dan. So you're going to get that head cover out. And if you're coming over the top, again, let's say you're a right-handed player, you're going to put this behind and to the right, outside your ball. And if you make that steep swing, right, where the club head gets inside and then over the top, you're going to hit that head cover, right? So that's the drill. But I want you to understand, too, the outside, what causes the steepness, right? What makes the club swing over the top, right? It's the club head getting in on the takeaway, right? We need time and space, and there's not a lot of time and space in here, right? So keeping that club head more out that way, right? We need this time to let it, set and settle and shallow, right? If we get it in this way, there's nowhere else to go besides out here, right? And even if you don't have the inside takeaway and you're still steepening it, right? I've been this guy. It's mostly the right hand, right? A lot of right hand force from the top of the swing that steepens it, sends the club out that way, right? We actually want it shallowing this way, right? So less right hand, and I feel almost like my right hand is totally passive until about right here. And then it's boom. Then we hit it and add some speed. But too much trail hand at the top can steepen the swing too. So I say that to help you understand, like, why is this happening so that you can self-diagnose, right? in addition to the drill, which you can just do the drill and you'll notice that you start hitting it better. But I think having some understanding is better than just having the drill. What drill can a die do to hit the middle of the club face more consistently instead of like the hosel of the club? Good question, not Chad. So I love working on this stuff. And I don't have them in here at the moment, but we can demonstrate with these. So these are, speed training sticks, but imagine these are alignment rods, right? Get your alignment rods. Every player should have a couple of these around. Mine are just out in the car, right? And you can even do this with a couple pieces of tape, right, or anything else, but you're going to make a little runway here, right? Set your ball right in the middle of it, and make sure that if you do deliver a good strike, right, that your club isn't going to hit one of them, so I would need to make this a little bit bigger, right? But this is going to give you some physical feedback, right? Such that if you were to hit the club, on the hosel, right, well, you would also impact this outside barricade, right? Conversely, if you were striking on the toe and you're trying to move your pattern in, well, the heel strike, it's the same as the hosel, right? But the toe strike, you're going to hit this inside barrier. And then you can, as you increase in proficiency, you can make this more challenging, right? You can make it more narrow. And that will help you train finding that perfect center of the face, right? Giving yourself some feedback to avoid. And again, don't do it at full speed. Practice this. Hit your 8-iron like 100 yards. Hit it 50 yards. And practice feeling that center face contact over and over and over again. Person says, how would you work on maintaining posture in the backswing? I tend to stand up while turning back, which adds in extra moves and loses speed. Yeah, great question. And this is something that it's very counterintuitive, right? It's not how our body usually works, right? And I'll explain in a second. And I'm going to borrow this from Dr. Greg at TPI. TPI is an amazing resource on YouTube. You guys should definitely check them out if you're interested in, golf mobility and force plates, 3D, swing stuff. They do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? But bear with me while I explain this. But imagine you were gonna jump into the air, right? Well, first you would squat down, your arms would lower, and then as you jump up, the arms come up and extend, right? To, help get you off the ground, right? The golf swing is the complete opposite, right? We squat in the backswing while the arms are going up. So it's a squat with the arms coming up, and then a jump while the arms come down. So it's a very awkward movement, right? But I think even just practicing that without a golf club can be pretty beneficial, right? To understand, why are you standing up, right? You actually need to be squatting because you're trying to push into the ground, right, to generate speed and force. So if we understand, that's the objective, right, what are some things that you can practice or work on to try to maintain your posture better? Number one, go really slow, right? So if you're talking about, you have a good setup position, that's pretty fundamentally sound, right, bending from the hips, not a ton of knee bend, right, the arms hanging comfortably, and then you're standing up, right, in the backswing. Well, I want you to feel the opposite, right? What would it feel like to have your chest get closer to the ball in the backswing, right? And this is just for, the person that's standing up, right? If you're not doing that, you don't need to get closer to it. But again, I want you to exaggerate the opposite feel, right? What would it feel like to really stay in it for, as long as possible, right? Feeling like that chest is almost getting closer to the ball, right? And notice what starts to happen. Well, instead of this weak position, right, where I don't have much of any kind of turn in my hips, right? The clubs in my arms are just kind of going to swing the club from up here, right? But if I really stay in my posture, you'll notice I get a lot more push into the ground right here. This hip, look how much further back this hip is, right? So trying to exaggerate that feel to really stay in your posture. I mean, that's going to create so much more speed, a lot more consistency. So give that a try. Try this fight fire with fire idea. C. Rich said hi. Hey, C. Rich. Dirty Dan says, how do you hit driver off the ground more consistent? I seem to always ground ball it off the tee. Well, I would definitely use a tee, if that's your question. Justin suggested the step drill too. Yeah, definitely. Oh, you mean off the ground, like up into the air, right? Not, I thought you were saying off the deck, like off, without a tee. So, right, if we have our tee and our ball and our driver for Dirty Dan, right? And you're saying that you're hitting it, into the ground or kind of low line drives along the ground. Well, I think you're probably hitting down on it some amount, right? Because this driver doesn't have a ton of loft. So if the ball is kind of coming out along the ground, you've got to be hitting, pretty down on it, right? And we want to have this driver be hitting up at impact, right? To launch that ball up into the air. So what I want you to do is practice at the driving range. Try to hit some drivers, and you can slow your swing down, right? You don't have to do this at full speed. Try to hit some as high as you possibly could, right? Give yourself one objective. I'm going to hit it, pretty solidly, but high. And try to see that ball launching up into the air, right? And you'll have to force yourself. You'll notice your swing, if you're really getting on top of it, steepening it this way, right? That could cause you to really hit down a whole bunch this way on it, right? But give yourself a task orientation and say, I'm just going to launch these balls up into the air. Give that a try, and that should help with the ground balls. Aquatics says, follow-up question, what are some fundamentals or basics you would say to focus on most in terms of grip, posture, alignment? Well, so all of those, right? So I was reading a book earlier, and I think they said 80% of the outcome of a shot is, before you actually swing, right? And some amount, even of that 20%, is things like wind and where it bounces and things that you can't control. But yeah, you'll notice all good players pretty much have those basics down perfectly, right? Or they do drills to maintain them. So I try to feel like my grip is the same every single swing, right? And I have some checkpoints, and I'll practice it, right? I just have a club sitting around my office. If I'm watching TV or sitting in a meeting, sometimes I'll just grab a club and grip it over and over again and just make sure that, okay, that's exactly, the knuckles I want to see in this orientation, right? And you build those checkpoints. For alignment, you can practice. You can put a stick down and say, this is my target line, right? And, you point that out at your target, slightly left of your target, right? Because it'll be parallel to your feet, right? But then you get in here, set up to it, make your stance, right? And then drop your club down and compare them, right? So in that one, you'd say I maybe set up slightly, if anything, fractionally open to my target line, right? That my club line is slightly to the left. Not much, on camera it looks pretty darn straight, right? But that could be, if you're setting up close to it, right, you would notice because this is pointed out that way, right? You want to see that club on your toe line be parallel to that target one. So that's a way you can practice it. Posture, you can definitely work on in a mirror. And what I like to do is take a video of my swing like I'm doing now, right? I have my phone on a tripod. Make a swing, couple swings. You can do this without even hitting balls. All winter I did this a bunch to work on my own posture to try and clean that up because I noticed I was getting really kind of hunched over like this, right? And tight in here. And I was having to adjust my swing a bunch to, compensate for it. So I just, even without hitting balls, I just set up a camera on a tripod in my bedroom, and I would record myself, just stepping into it, walking into it, right, and trying to really feel, which for me was more keeping my chest kind of high and open, and having my glutes, a little bit more behind me to keep my weight off my toes, right, because I started getting a little bit in like this, and then I would just practice over and over again, setting up to it, adjust, exaggerating, like what I felt like were the necessary changes, right? And then I would make a swing and look at the video and see how I did, right? And you can draw lines on the video with your phone if you want. Another thing you can do that's really easy is, make the video of your swing. You can set, your setup position, right? And just make a still image of that and put it side by side with the setup position of your favorite PGA Tour player. Right, somebody whose swing you really like, whose game is similar to yours. I like going to, Scotty Scheffler, right, for irons, pretty good iron player, and just see like, well, how does his look different from mine? For me, it's mostly, you know, my shoulders and my upper back get really rounded this way, so I have to pay attention to that. But again, just go side by side, and your brain will start to notice like, hey, you know, he's maybe I have too much knee bend. I'm too much, you know, kind of squatting in here, and I need to be, you know, a little bit more bent from the waist, right? Whatever the case may be. And, you know, use the tools available to you. You can use a mirror, you know, instead of a phone too, is a great way to work on your posture. Ryan says, I was striking my irons really well this week, played well on Saturday, then on Monday, I got the shanks out of nowhere. What can I do to help? Well, if you already played well recently, I would just try to shake it off. Right? It's going to happen. It's golf. If you play enough, you know, the swing will feel, you could play, I've had this happen so many times. You show up one day, you're like, man, this feels easy. I just stand up there, I look where I want to hit it, I make the swing, the ball goes there, you know, it's inside 10, 15, 20 feet every time. Like, this feels great. You show up the next day, hit it on the range. You know, this is often like I'm talking about tournaments, right? Multi-day tournaments. You're like, what happened? Like, where's the swing from yesterday? It felt so easy. Now the club feels all wonky. My grip doesn't feel right. Right? That's just golf. I think every golfer deals with that and has different ways of combating it. Right? But if you did start actually shanking it off the hosel, well, try to hit some balls out of the toe. Right? And really try to move your impact pattern around the face so that you can try to adjust, you know, adjust more quickly the next time. Fox FMX says, how can I achieve better hip rotation in the downswing through setup and transition? Thanks. Great question. So this is what I've been working on a whole bunch in my own swing. The first thing that you have to work on, or if you're unlike me and you already have a high degree of mobility, then don't worry. But I spent months stretching every day, right, especially on my left side, my ankle and my hip, right, doing a bunch of, you know, cars and you know, static stretches, dynamic stretches, you know, standing on one foot, right, doing all kinds of stuff to try and increase my mobility in those joints so that I could rotate, right? You know, several years ago, I had too much, you know, lack of hip mobility and lower back issues to even rotate if I wanted to. So that's kind of a prerequisite, I'll say. But from there, I think understanding that rotation is going to happen naturally if you let it, and it's just we get so excited to hit the ball, right? I used to be so guilty of this, of getting to the top of the backswing, and you're like, boom, time to swing, rip the handle down, steepen it, send it out, and then from there, you got to lean and extend to get the club back to the ball, right? But it's not because, like, the backswing was bad. It's just you need more time. We need time and space to make the hit, right? So the shallowing is really just the gravity of the club pulling the club head down while we allow the change of direction to happen, right? Imagine, I love this example of the pirate ship ride from the amusement park. If you're ever familiar with that, right? It literally looks like a pirate ship, and it just swings side to side. Well, it's kind of what our golf swing looks like, right? You put some energy into it at the bottom, we send it up, and then it kind of hangs there for a second, and then it comes back down really fast at the bottom. That's what we want, the speed at the ball, not at the top here, right? So you allow the physics and the way the club works to your advantage. It will be much harder to early extend when you properly allow the change of direction to happen, right? So for most of us, that feels like holding off the hit, right? So it's backswing, wait, then hit it, right? Or almost practicing like a Hideki type move, right? Where you feel a pause at the top. There's a great drill that I do where you make a full pause at the top of your swing. And giving yourself that time and space and understanding what the goal is, right? To keep our anything except the hands and arms and the club in this box, right? And the rotation, if we do that, will happen naturally because our body has to get out of the way. So hopefully that helps for Mr. Fox. MW Linden, how to fix my mega slice. Hit some big hooks, right? We've covered this one a bunch tonight. Learn how to hit some big hooks, MW Linden. You know, you're currently delivering the face open and the path across, right? As if you were going to hit almost like a spinny drop shot in ping pong, right? You got to learn how to hit like a power forehand, right? Really, get that ball turning right to left. Learn how to control the club face and the path. And you can do that at slow speed, right? I really would recommend, even with a driver, grab your driver and, try to hit some big hooks that only fly like 100 yards in the air, right? You can make a little swing, and really exaggerate that feeling of the face closing, that, getting the ball turning right to left. Golf Lover said hi. Hey, Golf Lover. DBP 1000 is back. What's up, DBP? Very cool. We've had a bunch of returning satisfied customers on the stream tonight. Thank you guys for saying hi. But if it is your first time and you're not yet subscribed and you want to do that, would definitely be grateful. We are coming up quickly on 1,500 subscribers, guys. Amazing after only, 4.5, maybe almost 5 months on YouTube. So we're definitely energized by the engagement. And we're going to keep doing this stuff. So I appreciate all the support. The open hand drill has helped me. Do you mean the one where you kind of keep the bottom hand, the trail hand open like this and hit shots? Yeah, I really like that one. I've seen Ludwig doing that drill a bunch. Right, and if you haven't seen it, right, so you take your bottom hand almost off the club, right? You're just kind of pushing into it the palm of your hand and hit some 50% shots. And you'll feel how hard that is, right? And it will truly force your body, same idea with just making some left-handed swings, lead arm only, right? It's going to force your body to self-organize, to turn, to close the club face with your chest, right? Otherwise, you're going to hit it a mile right. So yeah, great drill. Tell me, Blake, about this room 40 drill. Blake said hi. Hey, Blake. Lucky Penny says, randomly shank my wedges. Other irons are fine. Is it the length of the wedges making the difference? No. I think it sounds like it's maybe something that, it happened once and then you kind of got in your head. You could go and practice and try to hit, 10 or 20 wedges in a row out of the toe and just get it out of your brain. And then just say, oh, we had that weird moment where we were shanking him a bunch and then I hit a bunch out of the toe and then, moved the pattern back into the center and it was fine. I would try not to overthink that one. If you're hitting your other irons, fine. Could be setup distance, right? If you're standing really close to them or doing something strange with your wedges, but, yeah, I would really just, move the pattern out to the toe for a few swings and try to go from there. Apollo, how to get better compression. So you got to get the shaft leaning more forward at impact, right? More towards the target. MW Linden said, thank you, bro. You're welcome. Jacob24 says, fire tats, bro. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a dangerous habit, tattoos. I thought, you guys might think this is funny, I honestly thought I was going to get one tattoo in my whole life. I got the first one, and I was like, I'm not getting any more. I just need this one. And as you can see, I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong about things, but it's also important to acknowledge it, right? I mean, this is a silly example I'm using, but yeah, I think the world would be in a much better place if people in charge were like, yeah, I think that, but what if I was wrong? Okay. You're welcome, Lucky Penny. Carlos says, hello. Hello, Carlos. Quick question for the downswing. Could you show the difference in the path for driver versus irons? Well, the path should be pretty similar, right? Somewhat neutral, maybe a little from the inside, right? Pretty close to neutral. But if you're talking about angle of attack, right, that's really the main difference. I think that may be what you're asking about, right? With the driver, the club's sitting up on a tee. And our goal is to hit a low spin, high launch shot up into the air, right? More like a power forehand in tennis, right? So we need this club coming low to high, launching this ball up into the air, right? With an iron, the ball is sitting on the ground or close to the ground. And we have this lofted club, right? So in order to strike the center of the club face, right, this part, the shaft needs to be leaning towards the target, right, towards you guys, in order to expose that club face. And we have to hit down on the ball, right? Some amount of descending angle into the strike. Does that help, Carlos, with your question about the different paths, right? With the iron, you know, we definitely want to feel more of this high to low, right, on top of it, covering the ball. Whereas with the driver, we're trying to launch it up into the air, right? Have a positive angle of attack. And that's kind of the main difference when we're trying to separate. John Boy says, seems like I hit all my long irons the same distance as my 8. Any thoughts on why? My best guess is that because of, you know, your swing or your impact conditions, you know, up to like with your wedge, 9 iron, 8 iron, you're able to, you know, deliver an okay strike on it, right? I'm imagining, you know, maybe you struggle with a slice and the swing gets a little steep, right? Well, with the shorter irons, you can get away with that some amount, right? There's enough loft on that club. But as you get down to like a 4 iron, 5 iron, there's not enough loft to get away with that kind of mistake. So what I would want you to try to do is try to feel like you're shallowing out, right? That club head stays outside on the takeaway, out there, and then shallows kind of from the inside this way, especially with those longer irons, right? Because, you know, too much steepness will really cause you to struggle. So feeling like you're sweeping those off the turf a little bit more could definitely help. AKA Moses says, hello, first time watching. Thank you very much. Do you have any drills or suggestions for stopping over the top? I definitely do. Welcome to the stream, Moses. Thanks for checking us out. Feel free to subscribe if you are satisfied with the answer I give you. So first off, and if any of you out there are struggling with a slice, probably something, you know, similar to this. I could give you the drill, Moses, but I want you to understand why it's happening, right? When your swing gets over the top or steep, you'll hear me use those things interchangeably. The club head is coming inside this way, right? Let's say this is our target line. The club head and the takeaway is moving inside this way towards us, right? So then we're trying to get back to the ball. Well, there's nowhere else for this club to go other than this way to get back to the ball, right? And you'll notice when we do that, the path into impact is across our target line to the left, right? Really hard to make a consistent strike, you know, deliver consistent impact conditions with that kind of move, right? So what I want you to start by doing is feeling and exaggerating to a large degree the opposite, right? So really feel like your hands would stay close to you on the way back. This club head is almost going to trace that target line, right? If it extended behind me, that club's staying far away from me, right? I can't reach it if I reach out for it from here. If it gets inside, right, it's up here, I can just grab it. I don't want that at all. I need width to create speed and power in my swing, right? So the hands stay in, club head goes out, the arms come up, right? And then the club almost falls behind you. So if your current over-the-top move is this sort of loop, right? You want the opposite loop where the club goes out and then this way, right? So give that a try. And if you're still struggling with the slice, right, then grab a head cover and drop it down to the outside, right, slightly outside and behind your golf ball. We can get this out of the way, right? And again, if we make the inside takeaway and the over-the-top steep swing, we're going to come across it, we're going to hit that head cover. It's blocking our path to the ball. So we have to change the path. We have to get the path more from the inside, right? And if we do that, not going to hit that head cover. So hopefully that helps Moses with, number one, understanding what's happening. Why is this, you know, a miss happening in my game? And then, you know, a couple things you could work on, drill to, you know, work on improving that. So Neff Hunter says, are you still hitting down on the ball with 4 or 5 iron? Yes, usually I would say like neg 1 or neg 2. Whereas like an 8 iron might be like neg 4, neg 5, like on TrackMan angle of attack. So it is still down, but it is less descending than with a shorter iron, right? And some of that is because think about this club compared to like a short iron, right? This is my 4 iron. The lie angle, it's much flatter. It's a longer club. It's going to swing in a wider arc, right? So it needs, again, just physics-wise, some amount more shallow at impact, right? And if you're going to have to add a ton of speed to launch it if you're de-lofting it too much, right? So I think with the long irons, like 4 and 5, trying to find a nice middle ground that helps shallow it out, right? Because I've been this way my whole life. Even at one point I gave up on trying to hit long irons, and I had 4 and 5 hybrids as like a 0 handicap plus 1 handicap golfer. Almost won a club championship with a 5 hybrid in my bag. But back to the 4 and 5 iron now. And again, we really just want to feel this a little shallower than with the shorter irons. Right, and again, that's because it's a longer arc, it's wide, bigger arc, swinging more around our body, as opposed to more vertically with those shorter irons. Baseball Edit says, "Hi, I love golf. Don't you want to hit the ball first?" Yeah, you definitely do. Dumpster says, "I took 12 classes, paid thousands for PXG fittings, still can't hit the ball. Help." Well, I'd be happy to help, Dumpster. I'm glad you enjoyed the explanation, Moses. And Moses subscribed. Very cool. Thank you very much, Moses. Welcome to John Young Golf. We do these live streams. We also post videos and shorts pretty regularly. Well, shorts every day. At least one short every day. And longer form videos depends, like every week or two. So yeah, if you like the live streams, feel free to check that stuff out too, guys. Share it with your friends. We're trying to grow this platform and keep, sharing some knowledge, spreading positivity. I struggle with long irons 8 through 6, so that's because the swing is different from short irons. Not so much that the swing is different. I'm sorry if I gave you that impression, but more that just the physics of the club are different, right? This is a longer club than the 8 iron, so it will swing on a flatter arc around us just naturally, right? You don't want to necessarily feel like your swing is different, but I think just some understanding of how the clubs work can definitely be helpful. And I tell you, since I incorporated, mostly just fixing my takeaway, it is so fun to just grab a 4 iron and consistently flush it out of the center of the face. It's just really fun. I mean, that's what's so addicting about golf, is that feeling, just that pure, feeling. It's almost the feeling of nothing, right? It's just pure contact. Baseball Ed is also subbed. Amazing. Thank you very much. I struggle to lift 3-wood off the ground. Have any tips? I hit it good just on the ground. So I think it sounds like you don't need to try to lift it off the ground, right? You can even hit down on 3-wood some and still get it to come out, with a nice flight. So remember, this, the club, the 3-wood, has plenty of loft. It's got enough loft on it to send that ball up into the air. So what I want you to work on is, again, just center contact, hitting the center of the face, and making a stable, nice, balanced type swing, especially with these longer clubs, right? We've got to maintain our posture and our balance. It's a long swing, right, with these long clubs. So just make it nice and smooth. Right, you don't need to really be hitting it down into the ground, but don't try to help it up into the air. Right, you can still make a nice balanced swing where you shift your weight forward. Right, this club's got plenty of loft on it, so you can definitely, you don't have to help it up into the air. How long is your 4 iron? My clubs are all standard length, so I think that would make it like 39 inches, maybe 39 and a half, something like that. I used to be super into equipment and like building my own clubs, re-gripping my own clubs all the time. And I just don't think it helped me play better golf. Like, it was kind of fun. It was an interesting thing to learn about, but I mostly want to shoot the lowest score I can, and like constantly worrying about like, should I change the shafts in my wedges? Like, is that going to help me play better? Like, probably not. But, you know, practicing more probably would. Tough day today. And you know what? That's okay. Sometimes you have to bear those things for other people and, you know, pick them up when they're down. That's why I do really like having this space out here to come and hit and just clear my mind, chat with you guys, talk about golf, you know? Oh, that was out of the toe. Didn't like that strike at all. Oh. Sometimes I got to remember, I do actually come out here to practice, and I just get so excited, you know, answering the questions and chatting with you guys. Just got to stay in our posture. That's all it is. All right, guys, probably got time to look at like one or two more. We're going to have to call it a night. That was hit really good. So Spencer, my best over-the-top drill is going to be the head cover one, right? So we were just demonstrating this a second ago. You're going to set up your ball, set up the head cover or some sort of blocker slightly outside and behind the golf ball, right? And if you do make that swing that's kind of the inside takeaway and over-the-top swing, you're going to hit that barricade, right? Your path to the ball is going to be blocked. So in order to hit the ball, you're going to have to retrain your path to be more from the inside, right? More neutral in order to get to the ball. So that's a great drill, giving yourself a barrier if you are coming over the top, right? And understanding that it more than likely comes from some amount of, you know, the takeaway being inside and too much right hand from the top, right? So try to feel like the arms are maybe a little more passive. Give that club a second to start down on its own, right? You know, before you start really throwing it and ripping it down. All the stuff I used to do, right? If you just give that club a second to change direction, you'll have a much better time. Mark likes the myopia cap. Yeah, we are in the Boston area. Carlos, for high handicappers, no. I would, if you're a high handicapper and you're chipping around the green, my best advice is learn one solid shot, a consistent chip that you can get on the green from, you know, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 positions, right? No, you know, it might be to 30 feet, right? You can just hit a standard chip shot. It's going to run way past the hole, right? Our goal with chipping is to get the ball on the green in one shot. No double chips, right? So learn that one consistent shot. Tips for early extension. Oh, we just covered that. Perfect. Neff says, you have a good swing. Thanks. You're very welcome. All right, guys. I'm going to hit these last 3 balls. Get this guy out of here. And then we're going to have to call it a night. I'm playing golf tomorrow at 6:10 a.m. So I think that means 5 a.m. wake-up call. Should probably already be in bed, but you know what? I was having a really good time hanging out with you guys on the stream. If you guys have learned something, if you're enjoying the stream, you like hanging out, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. It does really help us out. Growing the platform. Yep. Just a nice flusher, just like that to end on. Awesome. Thank you again, guys. Really appreciate all the support on the stream these last months, and we're gonna keep doing more streams, keep doing more videos, keep trying to get better, try to share some stuff with you guys. Would I recommend the indoor setup I have? Yeah, I definitely would. This is the Net Return Pro Series. I just, built a pretty basic, like 2x4 and plywood base, put some gym foam tiles under there with a regular hitting mat, right? And I can hit balls in here all day and night. So I like it. I love hitting balls too, though. If you're more of a chipping and putting kind of person, then maybe not. But yeah, like I said, guys, thank you so much for all the support. Stay tuned on the channel for more streams to come. We'll see you next time.